Hi, I'm Joelle, and I'm just going to talk about the books that I read this summer. I'm surprised I didn't realize how many books I actually read, so I have quite a few that I have to talk about, or I want to talk about, so here we go. So the first book I want to talk about is Atomic Habits by James Clear, and this is the only self-help book that I read this summer, and I thought I read another one, but I guess I didn't. What Atomic Habits basically does is it helps you form this idea in your head of what route you kind of want to take to get whatever kind of goals you're wanting done and achieved. Now, this is very similar to The Compound Effect, which was one I read before. I've read that one multiple times, and that book is completely destroyed. Like, it does not look like a book anymore. So I thought I'd pick this up because it was very similar, and I thought it'd give me a bit of a change on perspective on how I look at things. So, I think it's great and easily laid out for people who have a hard time trying to form certain habits. But it's not just for people who are trying to achieve like these great and crazy, extravagant goals in life. It can, like for me, I was wanting to read more, and so like one of the habits that I tried to do right away when I started reading the book was trying to read at least 2 to 3 chapters a day. And so I would do that at the end of the day, and I'd make sure I'd be able to mark that off of like something I did. I enjoy this read. It's really big actually, so I would take my time reading it. This is a book I wouldn't just rush through and think I'm going to get anything out of it. This is something you want to really take your time, maybe read the chapter over and try and work your way into your life versus just read it and hope that you're going to get something from it, which is generally what you're supposed to do with a self-help book. You're supposed to really digest it and understand it, and hopefully it helps. And I know that stigma sometimes based off of self-help books is, they're all the same or they sound all the same, but some books work better for other people than they do for some. And in my opinion, this is easier for me to understand than The Compound Effect. Like, the reason I read Compound Effect so much is because I found it hard to kind of really get into my head, and it's a much smaller book than this one, and it's just something I would recommend if you're wanting to get into the self-help mentality and create habits that are easy to actually form for yourself. All right, fair warning on the cover of this book because it's a little scary. But the next book I read was The Fear Zone, and this is the second book I've read from K.R. Alexander. The first one was Scare Me, and in my opinion, actually, I liked Scare Me a lot better than I did this book. This one is like a kid version of it, if that makes sense. It has a completely different storyline genre itself, but at the same time, I definitely got the vibe that that is what this author was going for. And I didn't mind it, but I definitely, these are considered children's books. Like, for me, this would be considered like a Goosebumps book, but still like a level up from that. Because I loved the Goosebumps books, but at the same time, as an adult reading this, I was definitely not scared, but if you are younger, I would definitely think this would scare you. In my opinion, I liked it. I just found that there was a lot of things where you're just like, what? Why would you do that? Why would you? And I hate when books do that because then it completely takes me out of the story itself when something's so, obviously this is fiction, but so unrealistic that you're just like, no, even if this is fiction, like that's just, no, you wouldn't do that. I loved the villain in this, though. The villain was really scary. But again, it just kind of to me felt like a version of It for younger kids. It just sounds really weird when I say that out loud. But yes, that, I don't know. I'd recommend it, but I honestly, I loved K.R. Alexander's Scare Me a lot better than this. The next one I read is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon, and I don't want to say that name wrong. I'm so sorry. But I really liked this one. I took a long time to read it because I kind of didn't want it to end. I enjoyed it a lot. My description of this book without giving too much away. So Natasha and Daniel. So Natasha is like this really I don't want to say she's a pessimist, but you know, you have these two characters, and one seems more pessimistic and one seems more optimistic. And Daniel's this really optimistic poetry guy who just is in trying to enjoy life without having the control of his parents take over. And he sees Natasha, and Natasha is about to be deported with her family, and so she's just so kind of done with the day and with her life, and is very negative towards everything going on, and she's trying not to even be hopeful for the opportunity to stay. And so then Daniel just kind of tries to swoop in and come in and say, hey, let me give you some romance in your life at the wrong time. But it takes you on a whole day's journey where the two of them just spend all this time together. I enjoyed it, and it felt really natural, like for what it was. I thought it was cute. I thought it was fun. I thought it was something that I'm going through so much right now. I needed something very positive and uplifting, but the depth in this story was still on a level where I could handle it without being too much. So this is just, for me, it's not a quick read, because again, I took a long time reading it. I took like almost a whole month reading it, but it was great. I enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. I want to read more of her books. I have Everything, and that one's next on my list. Okay, bear with me, because this was one of the first books I read this summer, so it's been a while since I've talked about it. Confessions of a Domestic Failure. I was going to do a video just on this alone, but I figured I'd just add it into this group. It looks like it'd be a book that'd be like a self-help book. So when I picked it up, I'm like, oh, okay. And I looked at the back and I saw what it was. I was like, well, now I have to read it, because being a mom and not being like, not being a perfect mom, because there's no perfect mom, but sometimes not feeling like a mom that fits in, I thought this would be a fun read, and I was not disappointed. It's got so many fun cliches, a nice twist at the end, enjoyable for people who aren't even parents to kind of wrap their head around and relate to. I found I enjoyed it. So the main character, her name is Ashley, and she just, gosh, this is so funny. She was one of those people that did not expect to be a stay-at-home mom, which was how I was. And so immediately I was like, yes, that's me. And then also the house is just a total mess. She doesn't feel like she's doing anything with life. And her baby is still pretty new. So the struggle is really real to kind of handle that new life that is thrown at so many of us once we become parents. She decides to join a contest on improving to be a better mom. And for me, it's a fun way to kind of poke fun at how all of us as parents, like we see other parents and we think they have to have their life together. Because the way that I see that picture right now with them and their kids, they've had their life together. And that's not how it is at all. That is completely false. Like, no one is perfect, and this book just completely validates that. Like, there is no such thing as a perfect parent. And it's hilarious the way that a lot of these different parts of the story play out, because that's how it happens. That's really how it happens. This is a book I think people who aren't even parents would enjoy. It's fun, it's light, it's got some fun, quirky points to it that are actually really relatable. Very cliches. If you're not into that, or like the stereotypical cliche things, this isn't for you. This is definitely very lighthearted, very fun, and an easy read in my opinion. Okay, so now the last one I want to talk about, this one I had sent to me. So this is a book. It's an older book because my friend sent this to me. When I used to go on runs with her, we'd talk about all the different books that I was reading and that she was reading, and she recommended this to me, and she sent it in the mail because I just had to read it apparently, and I'm so glad I did. It's called A Corner of the Univers by Anne M. Martin, and I'm not going to tell you what a corner of the universe means, like the phrase itself, but when you do read what that means, like, it will just, man, okay, I can't not start. Okay, I have to. Okay, so the only thing I want to tell you about the story, because there's just so much. This is not a lighthearted story, but I think it's important for everybody to read. I think it's a story that opens your eyes to how blind we can be sometimes to different lifestyles or different struggles that people face. So the main character, Hattie, I'm going to say Hattie because that's what I said. If it's Haiti, I'm sorry. Hattie, she is a young girl, and she learns that she has an uncle who's 21. She never knew she had this uncle on her mother's side, and he came from a special facility where he exceeded the age now that he's 21 and he can't be in there anymore. What we know now in society, because this was taking place in the 1960s, so what we know now is there's autism and there's people who have it, and we know that they see the world differently. People in this book specifically did not know how to. So the best way to describe this, and I'm saying this with love, okay? Hattie discovers she has an uncle named Adam, and he's 21. Now, Hattie's a young girl. She finds out that she has an uncle on her mom's side she never knew. He has autism and schizophrenia. It's not pointed out directly in the book, because this is taken part in the 1960s, where people really didn't know what to do or how to handle people who were different. And Hattie, as a young girl, she just sees her uncle and is like, wow, he sees the world differently, which now as a society, for the most part, I feel like we can do that for people. You know, my sister was born 3 months premature, and she was a fetal alcohol syndrome baby. And a lot of people, when I was younger, didn't really know how to handle how she saw the world. And I'm sorry. So this book really spoke to me a lot, with a sister who sometimes didn't fit into a lot of other people's mindsets of what you should be like or how you should act. And Hattie, I think, you know, as a young kid, you know, you don't understand what different is. You just see a grown man having fun and living his life. This book just opened my mind even more. Having a family member, you know, you think you know it all, and then having a family member who has gone through that her whole life. And then I still feel like I learned so much from this book on how some people can just feel so cast out from society because they're different. The young girl, the main character, Hattie, I think portrayed it perfectly on how kids see differences and how there really isn't a judgment, just a curiosity of it. This book is something I think everyone should read. It's not lighthearted. There's a lot going on in it, and it has a heavy tone to it in some parts. But The Meaning of A Corner of the Universe is such a wonderful book. This is probably my favorite book that I read this summer because it was probably the most relatable book I could have ever read. So with that said, I don't want to give too much away. I don't want someone to feel like the book's spoiled for them, but this is probably a 10 out of 10, and I would read it again over and over. So please, Corner of the Universe is the book you have to read. I hope you enjoy it. I hope at least one book sounds interesting for you and you find the time to just get reading, because I think it's a wonderful thing to do, is to find something you're passionate about and read it and enjoy it and share it with other people, because that's what reading's for. Bye.